Hey guys, what's going on? Excoundrel here. Today we're going to be covering a game where I did not do very well. Someone requested this from my comments and they said, I wish you'd show a game where you didn't do very well in the mid-game and you made a comeback. Well, this is one of those games, and I actually ended up playing the composition that I posted on my channel a few days ago called the best late-game composition. We actually managed to transition into that from a bad mid-game, which is actually quite difficult to do. So I want to focus on some important decisions, and I'm going to cut between moments in the game where I feel like those important decisions are being made. Also, thank you to G2A for sponsoring the channel. Very kind of you. The link to the marketplace is in the description below. So first of all, I want you to pay attention to the fact that I have got a Jace and a Poppy with a Graves. This is a really, really nice little early combo that makes you pretty tanky because of the Vanguard buff, but you also get Space Pirates, which allows you to pick up a little bit extra gold, which can be very helpful when building an economy and trying to get to certain gold thresholds, like 10 gold at round 2-3. Now, not much happened throughout stage 2. I kind of middled, so I wasn't on a win streak and I wasn't on a loss streak, and I ended up getting to the Krug round with about 30 gold. So then I get to the mid game and I find a Kale and a Jhin, and I say, okay, I'm going to run a Sniper Kale with Vanguard frontline mid-game. I'm not actually going to use this as my last end-game composition. You might be wondering why I haven't combined any items. It's because none of the items are particularly impactful. Like Morello's would be good, but I could only really give that to Kale, and I don't know where my composition is going to end up in, after this, so I don't know if I want to commit Morello's. The only real item that I think that I could get away with committing is a Quicksilver, but that's not exactly a hugely impactful item. So I'm keeping hold of my items, which is something that I would never really recommend doing. But in this particular circumstance, I really didn't have a good direction with the items that I had. Morello's was there was a Quicksilver. I could have gone Mech, for instance, but I'm not a big Mech fan right now. So we're going to skip a little bit further ahead now to after the stage 3 neutral round, where we get up to level 7. And we choose with finding a BF sword on the carousel, and then also finding a Jinx to go into a brawler or even just a blaster composition. So I'm not really sure what my front line's going to be right now, but what I am sure about is that I'm going to be running the Jinx alongside someone else. And you see that I actually have a Lucian to throw in, so I have the Jinx. She can go in the corner because I'm not really afraid of her getting hooked by a Blitzcrank. And my front line is mostly Vanguards and Shen. So I have the Vanguards and Shen. I can work into a potential 4 chrono mid-game. And whilst I'm not actually winning, I am starting to actually kill more units, which is allowing me to preserve HP. So one of the most important things to think about in the mid-game is how do I preserve HP if I'm having a bad game? Like, I don't want to drop too low, because if I drop too low, then I get into panic mode. So I actually put a lot of experience into levels with having the Jinx with these items, and I decided to go for a level, a round 4-3, fast 8, to then essentially find the Misfortune. So I basically all in to either find Gangplank or Misfortune. Ended up finding an Ezreal and a Blitzcrank, so I've now gone into a 4 chrono state, and this is now like a decent-ish looking mid-game. I'm still losing, I'm still getting beaten by people, but you can see, even versus the mech player, who I'm pretty weak to because I only have a Jinx 1, that I'm actually having a much, much better time of it right now. One thing that I would note is that it's not usually the best plan to put the Misfortune on the same side of the board as your Jinx. The reason being is you kind of want to separate out the... you kind of want to separate out your carries, and especially because you want Misfortune to be diagonally opposite, because you want her to be able to essentially hit as many people as physically possible with her ultimate. So here you can see I now have the Misfortune directly opposite. We have the Gangplank on, and then we brought a Ziggs on as well. Now you might wonder why I brought the Ziggs on. If you've seen the video of me talking about that late game composition, you'll know that the Gangplank with the Ziggs is actually a very powerful combination to do exactly this. You're just looking to buy time. Like the stun is there to generate you time to allow your Misfortune and your Jinx to get their abilities off. So the Ziggs is there with the Gangplank for one reason only, and that's the demolition buff. And eventually what I'm going to do is bring in a Sonar to allow me to get the Rebel buff on my Jinx. And finding a Jinx 2 now at 4-6 is really nice, because now I'm set up pretty well for the late game. What I'm aiming to get in by level 9 is the Celestial bonus and the Rebel bonus, hopefully. But you don't have to play the Rebel bonus. It really just depends on what you find. And what you're noticing me do here is just put the Misfortune next to the Ziggs, just because if there's a Blitzcrank that I haven't accounted for, the Blitzcrank will hook the Ziggs and not the Misfortune. And I ended up putting my Jinx into an aggressive position here. So I wanted my Jinx a little bit further forward on the same side. And again, I'm trying to play around infiltrators as well, more than anything. you really want to make sure that you're trying to put your Jinx forward if there are infiltrator players. But right here you can see that Gangplank ultimate, all it did was buy time for my Jinx to get a reset, and it bought time for my Misfortune ultimate to get procced, and that's easy enough for us to get a win versus a very, very tanky Candyland player, which puts us in a really nice spot for this mid game. Like, we're in a good spot right now. So my plan at this point is, I know I'm strong. I'm not insanely strong, but I know I'm pretty strong in the lobby. The best chance for me to get much stronger is to go to level 9 and find a Misfortune 2 and a Gangplank 2. If I roll now, what am I actually looking for? Because I'm not transitioning out of this front line. Like, if you look at my front line, I'm not actually transitioning out of this. I'm staying with Wukong, Jace, Gangplank. The best way for me to get stronger is Gangplank 2 and Misfortune 2. There isn't any point me using 30 gold to roll for Jinx 3. It's just not going to happen. So you can see at this point, I am now already level 9. I have transitioned into having the Sona. I have got a Misfortune with the Giant Slayer. I've also got the Gangplank in the shop. Now, I did roll down when I hit level 9, but unfortunately it wasn't enough. But I've added the Lulu for Celestial. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add the... I added the Zephyr just to stop the Blitzcrank from hooking right at the start here, because that bought me a bit more time for my Jinx to sort of be able to at least get a lot of damage off versus this guy. And we ended up losing, which kills our win streak, but it's good enough for the time being. And then we ended up getting rid of the Jace. Now, the reason we ended up getting rid of the Jace is because I wanted to transition to having the Thresh. Thresh is actually a very underrated unit and actually one of the most important components in this, because he just pulls in really important units from the bench over and over again. So I swapped over here for one reason and one reason only. I swapped over to stop my Jinx getting caught out by the Kai'Sa. I knew that I was playing the mech player because you can see this was the round before the PvE round. So it was basically a 50-50 choice who I was going to face. So I basically planned for my worst case scenario, which was if my Jinx got caught by Kai'Sa, she was probably dead. So that's why I moved my Jinx away from the Kai'Sa at the very end there. Trap Claw is really nice, because what we're going to be able to do with Trap Claw is add it to the Misfortune. And adding that to the Misfortune now allows me to put her in the corner. And that means I can have a bit more freedom to use the Lulu where I see fit. Now, I actually lock the shield. I don't think locking shield is usually a very good idea. But the reason I lock the shield is just because... I feel like just in certain circumstances, it's going to help me survive a little bit longer. Like, for instance, right here, the shield would definitely help me survive a little bit longer than I would have done anyway. And that would actually just help secure me the round. So I decided to lock for the shield, and any upgrades are usually worth locking for. Shield is pretty big for Misfortune overall. So again, I'm locking here. The reason I'm locking here is I find a Kassadin and a Thresh. And again, we're just scouting around, looking to see who we're facing up against. We're just checking the general positioning. At the start of the round, it's very difficult to tell who you're going to face. So sometimes it's just worth mixing things up and seeing what you can do with it. And you can see Misfortune, she stuns up the Blitzcrank. She gets a big team ultimate off there. And it's good enough for me to knock out the other player playing blasters. And we're in a really strong spot right now. We're not, hard win streaking, but we're doing a pretty good job of it right now. If I was me, I would sell the Thresh and... Sorry, sell the Ashe and pick up the Kassadin. I hope I do that. It's the sensible decision, Excoundrel. And again, I'm just positioning. I'm trying to catch the Irelia. So I think that I'm playing up against the Irelia and I'm trying to catch her in the Zephyr, which I do. So you see I moved my Lulu at the last position there to try and catch the Irelia. And that was enough time for me to just, with the Irelia out, she wasn't really threatening any of my backline. And we ended up getting that win there. So for me, Lulu 2 is more important than anything else on this carousel. So I'm looking specifically for Lulu 2. So I don't care that she's got a protector spat. I just think that Lulu 2 is such a massive upgrade for me in this scenario, and that's why I decided to make that move. I then also pick up another Lulu from the bench because I have the Thresh. So, pick up another Lulu if you can. So positioning versus Shredder for me is pretty easy. I want my disarm to be directly in front of the Xayah. So that's my Kassadin. So my Kassadin gets his ability off and he disarms the Xayah. And then my GP goes off and hits the majority of this composition. So I just want my GP, my Wukong, and my Kassadin to be in front of the important targets, which are things like the Xayah and, the rest of the comp, basically. So essentially, I'm just looking to get my Kassadin to find his disarm, because he doesn't have a Quicksilver on his Xayah, so obviously that's important. And anybody that I'm trying to catch in the Zephyr, I'm trying to catch the Jarvan for the most part in the Zephyr. The other person that I could look to catch would be the Shen, but I have the Lulu 2, so the Lulu 2 is pretty strong. I thought I'd lost this here. Unfortunately, I was very close to losing it. I thought I'd actually lost the game right there. He out-positioned me by putting everything into the middle, and my Jinx spent too long killing the Shen, and I just didn't really didn't really position the best way that I could have done in that scenario. But now that I know that he's opting towards the middle, what I'm aiming to do is just try and position my comp a bit better for a middle-based composition. And I find the MF2 as well, and the MF2 is a really big upgrade, and I'm going to put the Wukong and the Lulu on my bench, because again, I'm looking for those guys primarily. So what I'm trying to do is catch the Xayah in with my Lulu. At the very last moment, I switched my Lulu over to the side, thinking where his Xayah might have been. Unfortunately, did move his Xayah, but I do have the Misfortune 2 now, and that just kind of obliterates the rest of his composition. It was very close here, but Misfortune 2 is good enough to take down the Jarvan, which allows us to win this very, very crucial round. And you're going to see me do a trick, which I don't actually execute properly, but it's something that you can do on PC. If you have a Zephyr unit and you want to Zephyr something important on the enemy team, what you do is you hold it, and then you just keep an eye on their board by using the hotkeys 1 or 2. And then you basically place your unit by pressing spacebar at the very last moment. And I just unfortunately mispositioned there. I should have put it on the other side. And if I had put it on the other side, I would have caught the Xayah, and this would have been an easier win. But luckily, we had Misfortune 2, and we ended up winning. So that's how I came back from a pretty bad game. Essentially just switching my entire comp over to a Jinx comp, and then using my front line that I built. I just kept the same front line. Didn't even try and move into a classic Blaster Brawler. I just moved over to just kept the front line of the Wukong, which worked out really well.